Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be trying to fix up this vintage Canadian National GS4. I found this thing around a year ago at Larkspur Line train store. I believe it was being sold for about $30, and I bought it in non-working order, and after a closer inspection, it's really clear why. If we lift this up, you can see the plate for the commutator is completely gone, and we're also missing a screw back here, which kind of leads me to believe that somebody already tried to tinker with this thing, which in itself is a bit of a red flag, but those are the least of my worries because this is a very bad design of locomotive, and I'll tell you why. If you look on the bottom here, it says it was made by Lionel. Now, Lionel locomotives in the 80s, I believe, were made by Kadar, which also made Bachmann locomotives at that same time, and those, in my opinion, are one of the worst drive systems ever created. They used these nylon gears and plastic axles, which unfortunately are prone to cracking, which on the diesels is not a very big deal. It just leads to a bit of a clicking sound. But on the steam locomotives, it's a much bigger problem because the drivers come out of alignment. So this needs to be 90 degrees apart from the opposite side. And you can see that some of the wheels are not 90 degrees. You can see this one has slipped right here and it's become unquartered. So that's a huge problem. So between this being a notoriously bad design and the fact somebody probably already tried to fix it, I'm not feeling super optimistic about it. We might be able to get it running again, but if we do, it's certainly going to be more of a resurrection rather than a full-on repair. But I'm willing to give it a chance. We'll have some fun with it, and maybe at the end of the day, if we're lucky, this thing will ride the rails once again. It's not going to be any prototypical locomotive, but I kind of like what they've done here. Anyways, let's try to work our way down to the motor. Now, I'm certainly not going to try to actually put this thing on the track, because without that commutator plate, it's obviously not going to work, but we can at least test to see if the armature is any good. Hopefully that's not the reason somebody opened this thing up. So I'll just set our voltmeter to test out continuity here, and we'll check the poles out. So that one's good. That one's good. So it seems like all the coils still have continuity, which is a great sign. I still want to actually check to make sure this thing is working properly though, so we'll just get some test leads and we'll see if it turns around, and then we'll also be able to check and make sure the gears and everything else are doing their job. I mean, it's not going to run with the drivers out of alignment, but we can at least find out if, you know, this thing is even worth repairing. This is by no means a good way to test out an armature, but we're going to do it anyway. And, yeah, it does seem to be turning okay, although, that's funny, it doesn't seem to want to turn the wheels. It's funny, it's like it's still making a little bit of contact inside there, but it's slipping, so either the gears are stripped out, or it could just be that the motor is not sitting where it's supposed to be because it's missing the other pivot from not having a plate here. We'll, take it apart either way to investigate. So we'll have a look here. This first one's got a small crack right there. The center one actually looks to be okay. This one's cracked pretty badly. Wow, but believe it or not, the main gear does not appear to be split. That's terrific. See if we can have a quick look as to what might be going on with that gearbox. All right, there we are. A lot of this doesn't really look that bad. I mean, there's a bit of old grease in here, but this is far from the worst I've seen. A little bit of oxidization, but none of these gears appear to be stripped out, so yeah, we'll just give them a quick cleaning and then put this part all back together. Just a little bit of brake clean on there. I wouldn't recommend this for anything made out of plastic or anything that's painted, but for a little bit of metal, this shouldn't really hurt. So we'll wipe off any old grease here. So I think given how good those gears seem to look, I'm confident that the reason it was hopping out of gear is just because this is able to move, and it's not supposed to be that way because it's missing its plate. Now, in terms of spare parts, a couple years ago I bought a Bachmann consolidation, and it had the same problem that this one had with the splitting gears. The only difference is that when I was trying to reassemble it, the drivers ended up popping off, and you can see it actually broke the metal. So, unfortunately, I had to scrap that project, but it does appear to have the same plate that this needs, so we'll just remove it, and we'll be able to steal the brushes off this thing as well, and hopefully we'll fix that problem. I'm only going to put the tiniest amount of oil on this bearing right here, and there's a simple reason for that. If you put too much, it will leak onto the commutator and burn, and that's exactly what's happened here, and you really do not want that to happen. Gonna load the springs in. Now, one thing that you should note is that the screws are both different sizes, and there's an important reason for this. See, this is a split chassis design, so half the power is on one side and half on the other. So in order for this plate to bring power to the brushes, on one side it just needs to make contact with this plate, but on the other it actually has to reach over. Well, with that all back together, we can test out the motor and see if this thing works. Nothing. It's not shorted because the light's working. There we go. So I over-torqued the bolts a bit, and it was putting a bit too much pressure on the motor and kind of pressing it into this metal here, so that's no good, but at least it sounds like it's working pretty well. Now on to the nightmarish part. Yeah, that one's not hanging on. That set feels fine. That one's not hanging on. The set is slipping. Considering that a couple of these are still good, some of them are probably still in alignment, and if you wanted to really do this properly, you'd go through and carefully measure everything out to make sure that it is exactly 90 degrees apart. I'm not going to do anything like that. I'm just going to try to eyeball it. Not something I recommend doing, but I've been successful with this once. Start with the most important part. Let's get some rubbing alcohol on some of these parts here just to try to get rid of any old lubricants that might ruin the adhesive, which I'm going to try to get on here. And I'll try kind of scoring up the metal here. There we go, plenty of stuff for the adhesive to grab onto. Another problem with the axles splitting is that, of course, they become larger than they were before, which means that these don't always turn as well as they once did. So this is definitely not going to have perfect electrical connectivity, but it might still run. I managed to pop not one, but both of the rails out of the pocket behind the piston rod right here, so I'm going to have to figure out how to get that back in there. It's not going to be much fun, but you can have a steam train if you just lay down your tracks. And now we'll see if we can get this part back into place. I don't know about this one, folks. Oh. Well, I mean, she's doing it. I'm hearing a lot of chatter, though, from the rods, and that's probably because I bent them a bit, but I'll see if I can kind of get some of this stuff back into place, and hopefully that will fix it up. At least it's, like, turning over, though. And now we'll just drop a screw down there, see if we can get that in. Alright, let's see if this junker will spring to life or not. Alright, moment of truth. Yeah, oh, no, it's locked up. Something's gone quite wrong there. Alright, got that all straightened out. 2 times the charm, hopefully. Oh no, what have I done? This is why I despise these locomotives. It's still slipping, which means we have to take it all apart again, try to fix it, and it might just do the same thing on us, you know? That one didn't grip properly. This part unfortunately has bumped off, so I think I'm just gonna remove it. So with that redundant rod gone and a whole bunch of adjusting, I'm really hoping that this thing won't bind as bad. I think it should be a little bit better. I moved the rods on one side forward a little bit, so it's probably not a perfect 90 degrees because I'm just eyeballing it, but it's maybe an 88.5 or something. I don't know. Let's test it out here. Oh yeah, okay. That's like a million times better. Well, the front trucks have come off, but it does seem to be kind of running now. Well, it was. Unfortunately, even though it doesn't seem to be binding up as much, it's still not making a very good electrical connection, and that's just because when the axles split, they expand, and it's supposed to be picking up power by kind of the sides of the axles through a small metal part, but without proper contact, this doesn't run very well. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to figure something else out. Well, it's a while later, and I think I've come up with a solution which will get this thing running at least slightly better. You see what I did was I added metal wheels and a bit of a contact system, connected a couple wires up to both the trucks, and then ran it through the tender. And then this will come out the back and we'll connect it up to the locomotive. So this thing will now have 2 sources of electrical connectivity, which means it will have an even better electrical system than it had when it left the factory. I don't know how well this is going to work out, but we'll try it out. I've already sorted out which wire goes where. We've got red to right and white to left, so we'll just connect them up as such on here. And then we'll go test it out. I hope this works out. I mean, if I'm honest with all of you, this is a lot more effort than one of these locomotives is worth, but I mean, it's all for fun, right? Alright, let's give it some voltage. Oh. Uh-oh. Oh. Okay, there we go. Just hesitated. But yeah, that's a little more like it. Look at that. Wow, it's like a brand new locomotive almost. I mean, it certainly doesn't sound like one, but yeah, that made the world a difference, honestly. I wouldn't have expected it to quite be like that. Just quickly removed a bit of plastic on this side so we can run the wire through there. Would have been nice if I'd drilled the hole on the other side and didn't have to run it through the other way, but it'll be fine. So let's see if this whole thing will work together now. Yeah. Okay, thought something like that might happen. Let's try it again here. That's more like it. Just went and quickly cut back some of the insulation just so that this wire could flex, because I think it was somehow transferring tension from the engine to the back here and popping the rear truck off. Sort of an unusual problem, but I think that that should fix it. You know something, I am thoroughly impressed. I can't believe how well this thing's running. I mean, it's certainly not perfect. It is a little bit noisy, but considering just how tricky these old Bachmanns are to work on, I think that this certainly is not half bad. One of the best ways to determine the working order of any locomotive is to do a slow speed test, so we'll bring this one down and just see how low it can actually go. I'm not expecting anything too remarkable out of it, but we'll see. That's actually not half bad for one of these right there. Can it go any lower? It kind of can. Okay, so it kicks out right there at about 3 volts. But honestly, for a locomotive with a 3-pole and that had a binding problem, that's really not that bad. Well folks, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed fixing this thing up, and I'm overall very impressed by the results. My only goal in the beginning was just to get this thing running to some extent under its own power. So to see it actually running half decent is really just icing on the cake. It's also really nice just to see one of these old Kadars running again. You know, back when I was a kid, you could find these things used at train shows, models from the 70s and 80s still in working order, and I find over the last 10 years it just seems like the last ones have had their gears split and they don't work anymore. But I think for now we'll just call this a win, and with that, I just want to thank you all so much for watching.